Is there anything better than a bit of friendly, or not so friendly, competition in the usually reliably polite and staid world of television? The long production schedules and sizable budgets of most mainstream TV shows tend to limit how many pot shots creators can take at each other, not to mention the fact that it's a pretty insular industry, and as such, many of the showrunners who could lampoon one another are aware they may end up working together later on. As such, it's always gratifying to see creators throw caution to the wind and slam their competitors regardless of the consequences. Whether it's a gentle parody between friends or an outright provocation between two warring shows. The showrunners and writers' rooms may respect their competitors and just be looking for some innocent fun, or they may outright hate the popularity, impressive ratings, or perceived success of the show that they're fighting against, and want to take it down a notch. Whatever the case, here are 10 times that TV shows had the gall to roast their rivals, and how they got away with it. My name is Kirsten Rea from What Culture, and these are 10 shows that mocked their rivals. Number 10, Futurama mocked The Simpsons. Matt Groening's other beloved adult animation effort, see us in a few seasons' time, Netflix Disenchantment, Futurama struggled during its original run to emerge from the outsized shadow of its creator's first and most famous show, despite having a sillier and often darker sensibility which earned it a cult following all of its own after a few shaky seasons. As a result, the show was always going to address the chip on its shoulder through a little light spoofing, as seen in the episode A Big Piece of Garbage, wherein the Planet Express crew search through a gigantic garbage barge, as the title implies, and Bender finds a set of Bart Simpson merchandise, prompting him to eat their shorts after a still functioning toy recites the younger Simpsons' iconic catchphrase. Of course, many more references to the series abound throughout Futurama's run, and whilst a few are similar digs at the show's over-merchandised image, such as the sight of more Bart toys in Mars University, a few are sweeter in tone, such as a scrawled HS4MB in Robot Hell, which stands for Homer Simpson for Marge Bouvier. Number 9, the ORVILLE mocked Star Trek. This one is an unusual case. It's no secret that Family Guy mastermind and current king of adult animation, Seth MacFarlane, is a massive fan of Gene Roddenberry's iconic sci-fi franchise Star Trek. Just look at our recent rundown of the post-Trek careers of the Next Generation cast, and you'll find almost every major and minor player in the popular series was offered a voice role on Family Guy years later. So when the ORVILLE debuted in 2017, it was widely understood that the series would be a presumably short-lived Star Trek spoof in the vein of Family Guy's Star Wars parody specials. However, instead, the show was managing to earn a fanbase of its own by taking its sci-fi universe relatively seriously, and it used a springboard for some workplace humour which wouldn't feel out of place in Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office. That said, there's still plenty of plot lines, characters, and even episodes which are thinly veiled spoofs of classic Star Trek. So the ORVILLE more than counts as a Star Trek spoof, even as it proves itself to be more than just that. Number 8, Community's musical episode mocked Glee. Rick and Morty creator and bane of network executives the world over, Dan Harmon has often taken his fellow showrunners to task for what he sees as formulaic or uninspired writing, character arcs, or plotting on his cult podcast Harmontown, where the lack of studio oversight means he's free to voice any opinion, regardless of how controversial. However, his cult comedy Community, featuring an ensemble cast as the mismatched denizens of a rundown community college, frequently risked its considerable popularity amongst a small but devoted fan base during Harmon's tenure as showrunner, when the series opted to mock other popular television offerings of the time. Just look at how the show's musical episode, which took aim at the then huge Glee by introducing a transparently villainous a cappella teacher whose drive to reach regionals reaches sociopathic levels and almost kills off the cast after they're brainwashed into following his insane musical machinations. Glee itself, often unsuccessfully, treaded into darker territory at times, meaning this spoof had to go hard in order to roast the mega hit. Community didn't disappoint, portraying the Glee Club as mindless automatons and their leader as an immoral mass murderer. No, tell us how you really feel about the show there, Dan. Number 7, Family Guy mocked The Simpsons. First things first, of course, Family Guy is a Simpsons ripoff. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that Seth MacFarlane's uncancelable cartoon mega hit has borrowed more than just its "an animated family get into weekly scrapes" structure from TV's most beloved Yellow Brood, and it's inevitable that any adult animation series would end up taking inspiration from Homer's idiocy, Marge's long boredom as an underemployed housewife, and Lisa's not so subtle tendency to be used as a precocious mouthpiece for the writer's views. Brian Griffin, who is literally voiced by Seth MacFarlane, unaltered speaking voice. But this hasn't stopped the show from specifically targeting The Simpsons with its satire, particularly in the episode PTV, which features villainous infant Stewie running down the Simpson family's instantly recognisable patriarch Homer in a scene which simultaneously parodies the iconic opening of The Simpsons while paying homage to Police Squad's opening sequence, which is itself a parody TV show. Complicated enough yet? This light-hearted spoof didn't stop the two shows pulling off an ambitious crossover episode a few years later, and the two series have continued taking potshots at one another both before and since this instance. Number 6, South Park mocks everything. Yes, the title of this list inevitably necessitated us including Matt Stone and Trey Parker's beloved once controversial adult animation behemoth. When it first arrived on our screen in 1997, South Park was instantly famous, or rather infamous, for taking aim at everyone and everything with its scatological satirical ire. This included its competitors, with the show taking on even the untouchable Matt Groening series The Simpsons. With the surprisingly affectionate homage, Simpsons did it. However, the likes of Intervention, Family Guy, Dog the Bounty Hunter, ER, Glenn Beck, Jersey Shore, The Hardy Boys, Pokemon, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and most recently Disney Plus's Star Wars spin-off series The Mandalorian weren't given such light treatment, and the series is still brutally roasting not only every big TV show to capture the public's attention, but pretty much every celebrity, movie, scandal, or cultural movement in existence. However, it's worth noting that The Simpsons did briefly return the favour in both Season 14's The Bart of War and Season 21's Oh Brother, Where Bart Thou? Very sweet. Number 5, BOJACK Horseman mocked Mr. Robot. Throughout its 6-season run, Netflix hit BOJACK Horseman did an extraordinary job of balancing dark character drama with a frequently surreal, too silly for words external world defined by puns, cartoon logic, and gleeful willingness to parody everything and anything. Somehow the series managed to make this apparently internally inconsistent tone work spectacularly, even when the show was parodying real-life figures who could choose between voicing themselves in good humour or seeing some woeful fate befall their cartoon self. Farewell, Andrew Garfield, we hardly knew thee. One of the show's parodies saw it recruit the star of another series, centering around a mentally ill, unreliable narrator who attempts to do the right thing are often thwarted by his outsized ego, overwhelming insecurities, and paranoia. Yes, it's the Rami Malek vehicle Mr. Robot, which was spoofed by BoJack when the show recruited its actual star, the Bohemian Rhapsody actor, to play a paranoid and self-important showrunner whose show centers around a paranoid and self-important hero whose beloved partner transpires to be a mere figment of his imagination, just like Mr. Robot's first season twist revealed. Number 4, American Dad mocked 24. There's an academic argument to be made that by centering a hyper-patriotic CIA agent as an all-American everyman and a heroic protagonist whose questionable actions never see him face accountability, the entire original premise of Seth MacFarlane's Family Guy follow-up American Dad is a parody of 24's post-9/11 inherently pro-US agenda. But we're not writing an essay, and the show has largely abandoned the CIA satire angle in, well, the last 10 of its 15 seasons in favour of a more broadly surreal comedy. So we'll limit this entry to a single and pretty brilliant instance. In the first season's threat levels, Stan accidentally contaminates his family home with a deadly virus, prompting his employers to quarantine the house for 24 hours, prompting Stan to sit his family down and spend what may be his last 24 hours on Earth watching the entire first season of 24. It's a lot less touching than Homer Simpson's 24-hour brush with death upon consuming a tainted pufferfish, but at least the spoof wasn't as brutal to poor 24 as the Boondocks' scathing parody It's Going Down. Number 3, Family Guy mocked King of the Hill. Lord knows what poor Beavis and Butthead creator Mike Judge did to Seth MacFarlane, but his beloved family sitcom King of the Hill has ended up as the butt of more Family Guy jokes than almost any other show. Well, maybe Star Trek. In which case, Judge should take it as a compliment that MacFarlane enjoys his work as much as he admires that sci-fi franchise. The first time Family Guy spoofed the long-running King of the Hill was a simple little gag in an early episode wherein protagonist Peter and his gang of pals accidentally recreate the iconic image of Hank Hill standing by a fence with some beers and muttering, "Yep," back and forth. Whilst the second sees Peter during a parody of Poltergeist, Lord, this show loves burying parodies and other parodies, tearing off his face gorily to to reveal a grinning Hank Hill. But for Family Guy's most elaborate mockery of its understated former competitor, the show had to recruit Judge himself as the voice of Hank Hill. In an elaborate crossover event with American Dad, Hank wakes up beside Lois Griffin to reveal that the cold open of Family Guy episode Big Fat is actually a dream he's having, only to then wake up beside his canonical wife Peggy Hill. Confused yet? Just go with it. Number 2, The Simpsons mocked Rick and Morty. When community director Dan Harmon created Rick and Morty for Adult Swim, there was no getting around the fact that the adult animated sci-fi comedy series owed a debt to the work of Matt Groening. Even with its darker content and more obvious inspiration as a Back to the Future parody, the show combined sci-fi satire with a subversive family sitcom, prompting inevitable comparisons to both Futurama and The Simpsons. Luckily, The Simpsons' 26th series finale was on hand to address this by letting Rick and Morty take over the phenomenally popular long-running show for a few minutes in a gory, ambitious couch gag which saw the eponymous pair accidentally crash into The Simpsons as they sat together in the living room. What follows was a dark, if lovably silly vignette where Rick and Morty attempted to minimalise the damage they had done. Well, in classic Rick and Morty fashion, Morty does, whilst Rick loots the beer and relaxes. The sequence's ending featured an exasperated, mutated Bart exclaiming, "That's it, no more guest animators," but the sequence was well received by fans of both shows and remains one of the medium's best brief crossovers by virtue of parodying both shows affectionately. Number 1, Murder, She Wrote mocked Friends. Okay, that's assuming you haven't watched YouTuber Pushing Up Rose's deep dive into this Murder, She Wrote installment. Shout out to the creator for drawing our attention to this surreal crossover. This mild-mannered Agatha Fletcher seems like the last protagonist on television to start firing off disses at her competitors, and yet the final season of this beloved series featured an episode unsubtly titled Murder Amongst Friends, which took some uncompromising shots at the still popular sitcom staple. It's worth noting that this episode coincided with CBS, the network screening Murder, She Wrote, moving the show's time slot to directly compete with Friends. Star Angela Lansbury was understandably heartbroken by a move which cost her a huge chunk of viewership at the height of Friends' popularity, prompting this installment wherein our gal shakes her head at the unsubtle comedy and corny sex jokes of Buds, a sitcom following some single 20-somethings as they navigated life and love in the city. Definitely not based on anything in particular then. And that's our list. What do you think of these mockeries of rival shows? Leave us a comment down below and let us know. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. But for now, I have been Kirsten from What Culture, and I will see you in the next video.